The Bernina machine has an automatic buttonhole function, and you need a couple of things for that to work. So you have your stitches here. There are several different kinds, so straight stitch, zigzag, and some different variations on those. Your buttonhole is number 0. You can see a rectangle here. That's your buttonhole indication. To complete a buttonhole on your Bernina machine, you do need a special foot. It will not work with a regular presser foot. So each Bernina machine has a buttonhole foot that looks like this. So there's a little lever down here right at the back of your presser foot. So you'll want to lift that, release your regular foot, and attach your automatic buttonhole foot. You'll need to press 0, and actually it's indicated as 10 here. You see that this rectangle pops up and there's a little flashing light on the left long hand side of the buttonhole. That means that's where the buttonhole is going to start. So it's going to start and sew down. If you're looking at the buttonhole, the left side, it's going to automatically go across, go back up the right side, and finish at the top. So you'll need a piece of fabric. I would always suggest, no matter what you're doing, I would always suggest doing a test buttonhole on a scrap of your actual fabric that you're going to use for your project, because the buttonhole function can be a little bit finicky on different fabrics. So for example, fabrics that stretch can be a lot more difficult, and depending on how heavy your fabric is, you may have some problems with bunching or your buttonholes not being the same length and things like that. So you also will need a marking pen. There is a red notch here that they say you can use for the length of your buttonholes. I've found it to be fairly inaccurate, so I always mark the length of my buttonhole here. The way that you find that information is the width of the buttonhole. So maybe you have a button, maybe you have a 1/2 inch button, and then the depth of that button. So how wide is it? How tall is it? I guess is, I don't know, it's kind of confusing, but looking at it the flat way, how tall is it? And that's kind of your calculation for how long your buttonhole is, so that there's space for it to move inside. So because I'm just showing you how to use the buttonhole function, I'm just going to simply mark a line on my scrap, and I'm going to place it under. When I place it under my machine, I want my needle to come down right to the left of this line that I've marked. So I'm going to place my fabric under, and I'm going to scoot that till my needle comes down. And now I'm just going to let the presser foot do its thing. So I don't really need to guide this a lot. You really shouldn't be pushing or pulling it through, because it's going to mess up the size of your buttonhole. So you really just put this in, and then you use your presser foot pedal, and your machine will begin to sew. It's going to do a zigzag stitch, and it will go as long as I let it on this first side. So I'm watching carefully on my marked line and waiting until my needle gets to the end of that marked line. Once I've reached that, I'm going to press the backstitch button and not hold it. So normally when you're doing a backstitch, you hold this and push the thing down. We're not doing that. I'm going to press the backstitch button once. My machine is going to automatically come back up the other side, and it's going to finish my buttonhole, and I don't have to do anything more but just let it do its work. That's all automatic. I had my foot still on the presser pedal and it just stopped on its own because that's how it works. Once the needle stops moving up and down, you take your foot off the presser foot, lift up your presser foot lever, and remove your scrap. Now, something that's important to note is that once you've done one buttonhole and you've set the size, your machine will continue making the same size buttonhole. So if you're kind of testing and you think, oh, I don't know if that buttonhole is big enough, and you just stick this under and do it again, it will make a buttonhole that is the same size. And the function of that is if you're making a flannel and you need 8 buttons down the front of it, you have a function on your machine that will make them the exact same size all the way down. But you need to be aware that if you're testing the sizes, you need to clear the settings so you can push clear, or you can turn your machine off and back on again and select the buttonhole to reset, and then you can choose the size again by the length of that first line. But otherwise it's going to, as long as you leave your machine on, it's going to continue making buttonholes the same size. Now you have a few different options for cutting a buttonhole open, because obviously this is just a rectangle of thread surrounding, you know, this is not a hole, it's just thread on fabric. So you have 2 options, and you need to carefully decide which one is best for you, and then you need to carefully execute it. There have been many times that students have used their seam ripper, which is a great way to do it, but have, you know, if you have a heavy fabric, they've been pushing, and then sliced right through the end of their buttonhole. So whatever method you use, you can use your very small scissors, and you can fold this in half and do a small clip, and then snip to the ends of your buttonhole, 2 but not through these threads at the end. Or you can use a seam ripper and carefully poke the end of your seam ripper through the fabric, making sure that it's in the fabric and not in your threads. And then you can just gently, very slowly, especially if you have a heavy fabric, cut that fabric until your buttonhole is all the way open. And this was a rather small buttonhole, but you can see